amongst the most vulnerable to coronavirus itself, and therefore subject also to very, very high levels of anxiety about the virus, but unable to meet with family and friends, unable to see grandchildren, unable to follow a normal routine and take part in the community activities that get all of us through the week. In my team, in those first early weeks and months, we received so many inquiries from people who were struggling to cope in different ways and struggling to access essentials. And I think it's true to say across the board that the effort that was made by our councils and by a very wide range of voluntary sector and mutual aid groups to provide practical support with food and medicine and other other essentials has been really extraordinary. But for many of the people who contacted my team, I think we found that the conversation that we had with them was often just as important as any practical help that we were able to provide. And we were so very grateful to have the option to refer people on to link Age Southwark for additional ongoing befriending and support. So please be in no doubt that the work you have done this year has saved people from the pain and heartache of isolation, has stopped further physical and mental decline, and has kept people going through these most difficult months. And I am in absolutely no doubt that you have saved lives as a consequence of the work that you have done over these last few months. While coronavirus has been a terrible experience and a tragic experience in so many ways, people have rallied to support each other. And across the communities that I represent, there have been so many truly inspirational examples of voluntary and community sector aid. And I hope that we will be able to maintain the infrastructure of community relationships that have been built during this time and continue to find new ways to look out for each other. I also reflect on what it has meant for so many of us to have spent much more time in the neighbourhoods in which we live. I think this has caused all of us to reflect much more on what we value in our local area, on the parks and green spaces, the local shops, our friends and neighbours. But I hope it might also have prompted some further thoughts about the ways in which the places in which we live can be improved for older people and for others who often don't, as a matter of course, get to travel further afield in their daily lives. The coronavirus has shone a light more widely on the way that our society looks after older people and the problems that there are with a social care system which we have known for many years is underfunded and does not sit on an equal footing with our health system. I am a co-chair of the all-party parliamentary group on adult social care, and during these months as a group we have had a weekly conference call with the working group of the APPG, which is drawn very widely from across the sector. So we have lots of large care home providers and home care providers, but also people who rely on social care in their daily lives as well. And that has been a very, very sobering experience week by week to hear directly from the social care sector about all of the challenges that they have had with infections that have just ripped through care homes and the losses that those communities have suffered, the challenges around PPE and access to testing, and some of the really heroic work that has gone on in the sector as well in very, very, very difficult circumstances. But we've had for a little while now a cross-party consensus and quantified evidence that social care is underfunded and fails to deliver the extent and the quality of care that people need. And I am clear that as we hopefully emerge from this pandemic over the coming months, that our social care system must be a central priority for our post-COVID rebuilding, and that some of the values that you have in Link Age Southwark around really valuing older people and trying to make sure that nobody has to live with loneliness and isolation in later life are reflected in the system that we rebuild in the future. So this has been, and it continues to be, a very, very challenging time. But in the midst of it all, I am grateful for Link Age Southwark and organisations like you, which work not only to provide practical support for people who need it, but also to build relationships which help us to see the world from different perspectives and value all of our community in all of our diversity. So I want to just close by saying thank you again for everything that you do, and I'm here to support you in any way that I possibly can in your vital work in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. That was great, and we thank you for your work, especially in trying to get adult social care brought up the agenda, which is absolutely key, I think, going forward, as you say. So now we're going to run through the business part of the meeting, which will be led by our Vice Chair, Adrian Greenwood. And just to remind people that voting is for members, and please use the virtual hand that should be at the bottom of your screen so that we can see your vote. So if I can hand over now to Adrian.
Thank you very much, Caroline, and good morning, everybody. I can only see the panel, so I can't see you all, but hopefully we'll get through this with as much fun as possible. So, as Caroline has explained, just to remind you, when it comes to any vote, this is just for members, and we're going to trust you to honour that. The first thing is to record apologies for absence, and according to the records that I've received, we have so far received 7 apologies for absence, and of those 7, 6 have sent valid proxy forms appointing the chair to vote on their behalf, so they are present by proxy, and we will try and make sure that we've got an accurate list of everyone else who is here in person. You want me to keep going, Caroline?
Yes, please.
So, as is good practice, we ask you to record any conflicts of interest. I think probably the best way of doing that is putting it in the chat or putting it in a question and answer, unless, Sophie, would we ask people to raise a hand or not? What's the best way?
Yeah, so we were asking people to raise a virtual hand to vote, and we can see who's voted, and we can see the name, so we can count them that way.
Yes, okay. And conflicts of interest?
I think actually if people could just raise their hands so we can then just note that their name, if there is a conflict of interest.
Okay. So for the last time, anyone who's conflicted in this meeting, could they raise a hand? Okay, let's move on to the approval of the minutes of last year's AGM, which took place on the 8th of October. These have been circulated, and I invite members to indicate by raising their hand if they're content that these are an accurate set of records. So how's that going? I'm just looking for my...
You've got 6 attendees who've raised their hands, and
yes, we need a lot more. I'm looking for my my raising hand thing.
Okay, it's in the participants section at the bottom.
There it is. Got it. Do people need more time to vote, or? So have you counted those?
Yeah.
Are there any against? No?
No, that's lovely.
So the minutes are approved. Are there any matters arising from the minutes that people wish to raise? Perhaps they could use the Q&A to do that. I'll give you a minute or two. Okay.
There's nothing come up on the Q&A, Adrian.
No. Okay. In which case, I'm going to hand back to Caroline, who's going to introduce Tim, I think.
So if I can introduce Tim, our current treasurer, although he's standing down as from today, and he is going to present the annual report and financial statements for the year ending 31st of March this year. But Tim, you've got to unmute yourself.
Right, so you saw my script. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for the introduction. This is the last occasion when, as your treasurer, I'll be presenting the accounts to you. They've been prepared and independently examined in line with legal requirements, and the trustees have already approved them at their recent meeting in July. It is just for this AGM of members to receive them. This is of course, one of the two reports put before you this morning. This is the one which you were sent with the notice of this AGM and is to fulfill our statutory duty. Following the meeting, this report will be filed on the public record at both Companies House and the Charity Commission. The first part of the trustees' report, which gives the account of who we are on page 2, what we've done, and brief comments about plans for the future. This is particularly relevant this year as the report and accounts take us up to 31st of March, just a few days after lockdown. So perhaps previous plans for the coming year needed to be shelved as the whole background against which the team were working had changed out of all recognition. Although this perhaps is not strictly my job here, I have to pay tribute to our then very recently appointed director, Sophie Wellings, who together with our fantastic staff team have completely turned around the befriending services being offered for telephone and virtual online offering. Thank you so much to all of you. The other part is the annual accounts containing lots of numbers, but for those who prefer it in words, they're summarised in the financial review on pages 9 and 10. This I'm just going to go through with you. This has been another good year where income increased by 5% from 533,000 to 560,000. This came mainly from 50,000 extra in additional grants. The increase of total income of 27,000 is particularly pleasing when we consider that a lot of money that were just one-offs in the previous year due to the 25-year gala, etc., have not been repeated. Income is received from statutory bodies, 123,000 from Southwark, and that is indeed the same as I have reported for all 6 years I've been involved. Then there are the grant-making trusts and foundations, with many repeats and 1 or 2 new funders, with particular mention of the National Lottery Community Fund support of the Dementia Project. Then there are donations from individuals, particularly our patrons and from our other local organisations. Finally, there is the result from the efforts of the community fundraising team, through events and sponsorships, etc. I think a vote of thanks here should also be given for great success in this area. And please let me commend them for their efforts since March, when the whole world has changed to virtual garden visits and virtual quizzes. Some of this money has been given under restricted terms, and to cover a specific period, and a proportion of this we are permitted to carry forward into the current year. After accounting for all the expenses, which indeed increased, there was still room for an overall surplus of almost 34,000. Taking this all together, then total reserves, which have been built up from past year surpluses, increased from 384,000 to £418,000. Reserves are held to guard against any downturn of income or large unexpected costs in the future. Of these reserves, 83,000 are income from restricted grants held over to the current year. 81,000 are seen as a designated property fund, representing the balance of the refurbishment costs of the new offices being spread over the 10 years of the lease of the offices at the URC church, when we can get back there. The remaining free reserves represent nearly 6 months of expenses budgeted for this current year, and we are in the fortunate position of holding more than this in cash at the bank. So for now, may I commend the trustees' report and the accompanying accounts to you, which tell the tale of another successful year in both words and figures. So I'm happy to propose it. Can we just have a seconder and then the meeting to approve them?
I will second.
Thank you, Caroline. And how we want to take a vote, or at least acceptance by the meeting. I'm going to proceed anyway, if I may.
Yeah.
This is almost the end of the statutory bit. But before I finish, I'd like to say a few words. When I joined the trustees in November 2014, the charity had just received the accounts of the previous March, showing income of 235,000. It has now doubled that. A small deficit of 36,000 and retaining reserves of 175,000 with a staff of 6 full-time equivalents. Since then, much has changed. More than double the staff, the new name and new office premises. If only one could draw up a balance sheet, not just of the money in and out and retained for the future, and that is the bits that we accountants love to be able to measure, but instead look at the intangible things. These too have changed immensely. Yes, the demand for services has increased alarmingly in some ways. The reputation of the charity in this community has grown continuously. The army of volunteers has grown in strength and ability to help our users. And the staff team too have risen to the challenge of all these things, and particularly in recent months when everything has been turned upside down by COVID. I've seen 2 people chairing the charity, 3 directors, and many trustees willing to carry on the work of this great charity. And now I can bow out. I'm handing over the reins of the treasurer to Bev Tanner, who has been waiting in the wings, or in Croydon at least, just looking for me to move on. The charity is in safe hands and has a great future ahead of it. So that's the statutory report done. Later comes the report about the impact the charity has made in fulfilling objectives this last year. But meanwhile, it leaves me just one very, very last duty to perform, as you see on the agenda, and that is to propose the motion that Knox Cropper be re-elected independent examiners, that's auditors, for the coming year. Again, I'll propose the motion, if I may have someone second it, and then we'll take acceptance by the meeting.
I'll second.
Thank you very much, Chair. Do we have a way of picking up the acceptance of that by the meeting? Otherwise, yeah. I can bow out. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. So the remaining piece of formal business are the elections to the board. And so the meeting notes the retirement from the board of Leslie O'Mara, Tim and Nicholas Merriman. And we have a motion to re-elect Mary Woodman, who's a current trustee, and to appoint Bev Tanner, who's hopefully standing in as treasurer, and Stephen Hendon as a board member. And so I would like to put that motion to the meeting. And again, I would ask somebody to second that. Perhaps Adrian, could you second that?
I'm very happy to second that. Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you. And if I could ask people to vote on that, please. Okay, thank you very much. So in noting these retirements from the board, I'd just like to recognise the contribution of the board members who are now moving on. Tim, thank you so much for all your work. You have stolen my thunder in terms of saying that you have overseen a doubling of our turnover. We have had a period of growth and some problems to overcome, but you were always there and have always gone above and beyond your role of treasurer, and have been a fantastic support to me as the chair, but also I know to the director and to the guys in the team who deal with finance. So thank you so much. And I hope that we will continue to see you as a supporter of us over the years.
I remain a member.
Good. Excellent. So next I'd like to say thank you and acknowledge the wonderful contribution of Nick Merriman. He's one of our longest serving trustees, and he was previously on the board of Dulwich Helpline, and he's been involved since 2011, and in recent years has hosted our annual patrons party. And as a very well-respected QC, he is able to bring his huge legal brain and highlight things that needed to be highlighted in our trustees meeting, and we will miss those contributions. But thank you so much for your huge and significant contribution over the years. And next is Leslie O'Mara. Leslie has been on the board from 2016 to 2020 and was chair of our community fundraising group. During this time, Leslie has completely transformed this, taking it from a group that raised a not insignificant £15,000 annually, but now to 60,000 and over 80,000 in our anniversary year. We cannot underestimate or thank you enough for that fantastic work that you have done and enabled us to see that we can raise really significant funds from our wonderful community around us. And finally, I'd like to give a special mention to our honorary president, Catherine St. John Brooks, who sadly can't be with us today, but Catherine is also a long-standing member, having been chair of Dulwich Helpline, and then became chair of the newly merged organisation in 2012. She stood down in 2018 when I took over as chair, but she became our president. And it is wonderful to report that her contribution to Link Age Southwark and work for older people of Southwark has been recognised in this year's honours list when she was awarded a British Empire Medal. So a much deserved recognition to Catherine. And now I'd like to hand back to Sophie, who's going to introduce our impact report.
Thank you, Caroline. So I'm going to, as Caroline mentioned, I'm going to be talking about our impact report. And in order to do that, I'm going to share my screen in a moment, but I'll just start off by saying that the report is a reflection on the previous year. So it's the year 1st of April 2019 to the end of March 2020. So it predominantly includes those rather halcyon days of pre-COVID, which I know seems like a distant memory, but I think it's really important for us to remember that a lot of our work, most of our work last year took place prior to the current situation. So my presentation does reflect some of that, but also gives a nod to where we are now. So I'm going to share my screen. Bear with me. Okay, so our impact, as Tim mentioned, our impact is the difference that we make in our local community. So it's about our vision and our mission as an organisation. So our vision is friendly, vibrant local communities where older people thrive. And our mission is to help older people stay connected to their communities, alleviating loneliness, improving health and well-being, and making communities stronger through volunteering. So our last year in numbers, we have lots and lots of numbers. These are just a few of them, and they kind of identify sort of the work that we've done, really. So last year we had contact with 887 older people. 19% of them were over 90 and 59% of them are over 80. The average age of our service users is 81. So we have strong reach. We work with people over 60. We ran 26 groups last year, which met a total of 758 times. We did 107 gardening and DIY jobs that we generally refer to as practical support. So that's about supporting people to live independently in their own homes. We matched 233 volunteers with service users in befriending matches. We were supported by 465 volunteers during the year, and those volunteers contributed 24,819 hours of volunteering, which is worth, based on the London living wage, it's worth over £260,000 for the organisation. So it's a huge, huge contribution. So we operate something called the Connecting Communities model, which essentially is about the local community and all of the different people that come together to contribute to our service provision. So we connect with local VCS organisations, we connect with local supporters, we connect with local businesses to offer the services that we offer. So for example, our groups, all of our groups, 26 of our groups, were provided in venues that were given to the organisation free of charge, which when I came in as director was very happy news for me, that we got all of our venues free, which is a significant contribution. So we hold groups in sheltered housing units, we have groups in local churches, we've got groups with local partners, and we provide transport journeys to our groups. So last year we did over 4,000 transport journeys. And those transport journeys are provided significantly by volunteer drivers. So we've got over 90 volunteer drivers who support the provision of our groups. The groups are also run by our group volunteers alongside our specialist tutors. So you can see sort of the whole kind of community contribution to making that service provision happen. Then our newsletter goes out 5 times a year. And it's brimful of information about the local community, so things that service users can get involved with, activities that are happening, events that are happening, events that we're doing, free offers that we've got. So just before we went into lockdown, we had energy saving light bulb offer for people. That was massively popular. We haven't yet got round to delivering those, and that was a contribution from one of our volunteers who gave the donation for us to buy those light bulbs. And just after lockdown, we did a special edition newsletter to tell our service users about COVID, because, to use a phrase from Southwark CCG, we are a trusted source of information, so it felt really important to put information out there about what the restrictions are and the impact of those. Then we have our events. So we run a calendar of events each year. So last year we had a spring party. We had 3 Christmas parties, because one Christmas party is never enough. And these are really popular and very happy events. They're a sad loss at the moment. And they are supported by local pubs who host our events. We have corporates who provide the funding for our events. They've also provided volunteers to attend those events. And they're a significant part of our calendar each year. Alongside that is the practical support that I mentioned earlier. So this year we have added to our service provision around practical support with the addition of a shopping and prescription pickup service that has been made possible by the contribution of volunteers. So we've had over 30 volunteers going out and doing shopping for service users. And this came about because when we went into lockdown, excuse me, the first thing that we did was to contact all of our service users to find out how they were, whether they had the support that they needed, what support we could offer. And shopping was one of the main things that came out of that. So we dedicated a full-time staff member, Imogen, who did a wonderful job in setting up the shopping service. And that's something that we're going to retain. So we're still doing it now. And the funding for that service also came from a local funder. So then we've got our dementia specialist services. So our dementia work really goes from strength to strength. Tim mentioned the funding that comes from the National Lottery to deliver those services. We've got a wonderful dementia team. And we set up a new carers group this year in partnership with Bell House. We also offer Dementia Friends training, and we've run 5 Dementia Friends training sessions and trained 30 Dementia Friends during the year. And then we also, because befriending is part of the dementia offer, we realised that there was some hesitation with volunteers about being matched with somebody with dementia, maybe a little bit of nervousness about, am I going to be okay doing this? So the team developed some additional training for volunteers about working with people with dementia. And so last year we made 71 befriending matches for people with dementia. Which brings me to befriending, which is obviously a huge part of our service provision. As I mentioned before, we did 233 befriending matches last year. 95 of those were new matches. And as Tim mentioned, we now have telephone befriending as well, that all of our befriending moved to telephone befriending as a result of the pandemic. And we added an additional, I think it's about 50 new relationships, because we offered all of our service users who weren't currently matched with a befriender whether they would like a befriender during the period of lockdown, and those relationships are still ongoing. So that's sort of how the model works really, and we get so much from, as I say, local people, local supporters, local businesses. It's really sort of the essence of what good community engagement looks like. So a significant part of connecting communities is working in partnership. And we have happily been involved since 2012 with the COPSINS partnership, which stands for the Consortium of Older People's Services in Southwark. And the partnership consists now of Age UK, Lewisham and Southwark, Blackfriars Settlement, Southwark Carers, Southwark Pensioners Centre and Time and Talents. And last year, Southwark put forward a proposal essentially for a provider. They were looking for a provider to offer hub-based provision within Southwark for older people and carers. So a tender was put out, and the COPSINS partners decided that they would bid for this tender. And a huge amount of recognition and credit needs to go to my predecessor, Ruth Driscoll, who worked alongside all of the COPSINS CEOs incredibly hard to put the tender material together. It was a huge amount of work. I can still see the pain etched on some of the faces of the CEOs who are still around the table in making all of that happen. It was a huge piece of work, and I'm very happy to say when I joined the organisation in January 2020, we hadn't heard yet as to whether we had been successful We eventually heard in February. Southwark Commissioners made a wonderful decision and awarded it to the Copsins Partnership, which I just think is a really, really positive outcome, not least because it guarantees us funding for another 5 years, which is very important. But actually, much more importantly than that is that the partners who form Copsins have a long history of working with older people in the borough and are specialists at what they do. We've got a diverse offer, so we don't all do the same thing. We do different things. We've got some overlap, and we've all got strengths that we bring to that partnership. I really enjoy meeting with the other directors, CEOs from the partners. I believe that we're really, really committed to this piece of work. I also believe that we're going to do it really well. There's a lot of complementary activity that goes on. So it's a huge piece of work for us that we've now started. But it was a massive achievement for the last year. And as I say, Ruth Driscoll certainly deserves an awful lot of recognition for the work that she did in making this happen. So that piece of work now has a name, and it's called Aging Well Southwark. The full title is Aging Well Southwark Support for Seniors and Carers. So the vision that Southwark had was for one front door. So what they want to achieve is that older people don't get bounced from pillar to post trying to get a service that they need, that they can come to any of the providers involved in delivering the hub, delivering Aging Well Southwark. And we will know about them, and we will know where to signpost them, and we will know how to support them. And I'm sure we've all had that experience of ringing an organisation and they say, oh, you don't want to speak to this person, you want to speak to the other, and then about 5 people down the line you wish you'd never started. So the vision is about sort of creating this seamless service for older people, and we will be sat alongside adult social care in offering this service. In addition to what we already do, part of the offer for Aging Well Southwark is going to be access to information and advice services, access to the Happy Feet service that Age UK offer, access to handy person services, support with form filling, and support with IT. And each of the providers needed to have a physical space that people can go to for drop-ins and for appointments. And in a hugely timely fashion, just after I started, I was approached by Vinay Asa from Southwark CCG, who was overseeing the setting up of the brand new Tessa Jow Health Centre, and said, would you like a free room at the health centre for Link Age Southwark to offer some services? And I didn't hesitate in saying yes. It's a wonderful centre. It's right opposite where our offices are, so it makes life incredibly easy. And it just feels very kind of synchronized, really, in terms of, as I say, that kind of partnership approach and agencies working together in the best interest of people that are in need in the borough. So we had the soft launch of this on the 1st of June this year. Obviously, it's been slightly restricted by everything that's going on at the moment, but there's still a huge amount of work that's happening. The partnership is meeting regularly, and certainly the team and myself are very excited about this moving forward. So one of the key parts of everything that we do, if not the key part of everything that we do, is our service users. And every year we conduct a service user survey and get feedback from our service users that goes into our impact report. This year, the survey is usually done by post, and that couldn't happen because we were in lockdown. So we did it over the telephone. We recruited a pool of volunteers from our existing volunteers. And we rang people up and asked them if they would be interested in responding to our questions. And these are just some of the things that people told us in terms of how they feel about Age Southwark service provision. Alongside the service user survey, we also have a volunteer who goes out and does regular evaluations of our groups, Janet Lowe. And Janet goes and meets with group members, she runs a focus group, and she talks to people about their experience of the group and whether there's anything that we could do better. And we always take the learning from these evaluations and from the service user survey, and we use it to enhance our provision to make it better. But you can see there that generally, I won't read them all out, but that generally the results of our survey are incredibly positive. So just before moving on to this particular picture, and inviting a couple of people to join me, I do want to say a huge thank you to my team. COVID has been challenging for everybody. For my team, for our team, everything changed overnight, as it did for the whole country. We were able to go to home working overnight, which is very much thanks to our operations coordinator, Rob. We were all set up to be able to work from home instantly, which was just fantastic. It has been a challenging time. I know that sounds like stating the obvious, but it feels really important to say it. But the team have just stepped up in the most fantastic way. And occasionally I would see sort of their weary faces on Zoom, people sitting on their beds in their flats, people who I knew were also homeschooling, and they've just carried on, uncomplaining, sometimes a bit tired, sometimes a little bit frustrated, but they've just kept the focus on what it is that we're here to do, which is to support our service users. And they really have gone above and beyond. And one of the things that I think has sustained us the most, and this is in the impact report, is the wonderful feedback that we've had from our service users who have, they've left us voicemail messages, they've sent us letters, they've said things anecdotally, and they've just shown real appreciation to the team for the work that we have done. We've had feedback from carers, we've had feedback from family members, and it's actually in many ways, the irony is that it's the service users that have sort of bolstered us and helped us at times when perhaps the motivation has felt a little bit harder. But yeah, I just do really want to acknowledge how wonderful the team have been, and how they have really kept the focus of what it is that we're here to do and just kept going, because their personal lives have changed as much as their professional lives have changed, and they've really put it to one side, and I feel incredibly proud of them and incredibly proud to manage the team. So thank you to all of you, because I know you're out there listening. Okay, so I would now like to invite, so here in this picture, actually, I love this picture. So this is Linford and James in Dulwich Park. So Linford is one of our service users and James is his befriender. And Mark, who was our communications officer for a while, went and met with them. Mark did all of the case studies in the impact report. He's now moved on from the organisation, but he did some fantastic work. So yeah, it's just a lovely picture. And I'm now going to talk to Linford and his daughter Sharon about their experience with Age Southwark. So I'm going to stop sharing and welcome Sharon and Linford.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. How are you both?
Well, thank you. And yourself?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you so much for coming and joining me.
That's okay.
I can't actually see you. Lucy, are we able to turn?
Hold on.
Sharon,
my
are you
video.
able to...
That's
oh, there we go.
Ah, there we go.
Great. Thank
Okay.
you.
That's all right.
That's much better. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Linford. How are you doing?
All right.
Great. So just for the benefit of our audience, I know we had this conversation briefly the other day. So tell us, how you first came to hear about Age Southwark.
Sharon went to the laundry and the lady volunteer named Pauline.
There's a volunteer called Paula who introduced us to Link Age, as I was looking for my dad to get involved in some exercise classes, and she signposted us to Link Age. Dad started off doing exercise classes at Jack Jones, which he enjoyed. And then it went on to St. James the Cloister.
Yeah.
And he did a few sessions there as well. And also I wanted, because I'm his full-time carer, and I wanted to for him to be able to go out and interact with someone like a male figure, really, instead of being around myself all the time. So we approached Link Age for the befriending aspect of their service as well. Dad was a little bit hesitant at first, but the good thing was that it was a really good match. He was matched with James, and that relationship has worked out really, really well.
And Linford, tell me, what do you like about James?
Yeah, he's reliable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's funny.
And he's give a lot of joke. A lot of joke.
Yeah. And what do you two talk about when you meet up?
We talk politics and how the country going, how the country running.
Okay, so you put the world to rights.
Yes, he said that we come to put the world to right.
And do you share the same interests in politics?
Yes.
You argue?
Yes, and the cop lady, Isabella, saved the same interest in politics.
And I think you've also got a shared love of music, have you?
Yes.
And what music is that?
Like soul and reggae. Not only reggae, some reggae.
And were you, I think you were meant to be going to a concert, weren't you, Linford? Tell us about the concert.
Beg your pardon?
Were you meant to be going to a concert with
Yes,
with
yes. But the concert it cancelled due to sickness.
What concert is it?
It was Jimmy Cliff.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're going to go when it's back on, hopefully next year?
Next year, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And tell us about the exercise groups, Linford. You go online now, don't you?
Yes, yeah.
How's that?
It's good. It's good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Do you still feel like you're getting the same benefit, or is it very different?
You're getting the same benefit.
Oh, that's good. Okay. And who's the tutor? Do you know the tutor?
I think it's
Is it Shakila?
yes, that's it, Shakila. Yes, it's this morning at 10:30.
Oh, sorry that we've made you miss it.
That's all right.
And so what difference has it made for you, Sharon, would you say?
It means that Dad has got other things to fill his day with, because as you know, from March, the pandemic, and his centre has been closed because he goes to the day centre, used to go to the day centre twice a week, on a Tuesday and Wednesday. and then he went to the neuro rehab at the gym on a Monday and a Thursday. But he's unable to do any of that now. So at least the exercise class on a Tuesday and the other online classes he does on YouTube, they help to keep him active. So his muscles don't, because you know he was struggling that his muscles were getting weaker. So he's able to keep strengthening his muscles, and he enjoys it as well. And it's something for him to fill his day with.
Yeah, absolutely. And when are you due to see James again, Linford?
What there?
He'll phone you.
He phoned me when he coming.
Okay.
He phoned me Friday or Saturday morning. And then let me know.
So you get to speak to him on a weekly basis?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that one was quite a good match, wasn't it?
Definitely, yeah, definitely. As I said, Dad was a bit hesitant at first. He didn't want to take part, but I had to encourage him to say, give it a try and see how you get on. And thank goodness it worked out. It was a fantastic match.
Yeah. I know James speaks very highly of it as well. Really enjoys seeing you.
They get on very, 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 very well. You know, very, very well.
Yeah. So it's sort of the best befriending relationships where there's that two-way connection, isn't there?
Yeah, and James is always very full of energy, and you know, always has a smile on his face. I've never seen him being annoyed, actually. He's always very happy. And he has such a busy schedule as well, family schedule, you know.
Does he?
Yeah, and he you know, he always fits Dad. He always makes time for Dad, you know, in his busy schedule, which is really good.
That's great. So do you look forward to seeing him, Linford?
Yes.
That's great. Lovely. Is there anything else that the two of you would like to say at all?
Just thank Link Age for being there, for you know, for the match and all the various exercise classes that they provide in online, because it's a really difficult time at the moment for everyone, and there's a lot of elderly people who are still in isolation. I mean, I'm struggling as well, but you know, I've got different support agencies that I can turn to. I said Link Age, Alzheimer's UK, some carers, so I've got some support that I can turn to if things get really, really difficult.
Yeah.
Just thank Link Age for all the support that they've given us. We miss all the tea parties though.
Yeah, I know.
The yearly tea parties, we do miss those.
Yeah, because Linford, you came to them too, didn't you, the parties?
Yes.
You enjoyed those. Yeah, we really miss them as well. They're such a huge part of our calendar.
Definitely.
I think your point there, Sharon, about carers is a really important one. I think sometimes carers can get forgotten when there's often a focus on the sort of the service users themselves.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so to hear that you're getting support is really good to hear and feels really important.
Yeah, it is, definitely.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much for coming along under these rather unusual circumstances. It's really nice to have you part of our meeting today. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for inviting us along.
That's our pleasure.
Okay, thank you. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so I am now going to hand over to Jenny. Jenny is our volunteer and operations manager, and alongside Caroline, they are going to showcase the wonderful work of our volunteers.
Oh, good morning, everybody, and it's a pleasure to be here at our AGM, our virtual AGM. So Caroline and I are going to be a bit of a double act on the volunteer presentation. I'm going to hand you over to Caroline to just introduce this section, really, but this is really a tribute to all our volunteers and how brilliant they are. So Caroline, can I just get you to say those few words?
Thank you. And actually, before we move on to the volunteers, I would like to echo the my thanks to Sophie and the team for the extraordinary work that they've done since March. It's not been easy, and I know that we've all talked about the struggles that people have had, but the team stepped up incredibly to move everything online and to offer new services where they were required. So thank you to Sophie and to all the team. And now we move on to our wonderful volunteers. And I wonder if I can ask Jenny to play the animated slide sequence. While I just say, Link Age Southwark is a volunteer organisation, and we rely on the goodwill and dedication of over 450 volunteers to provide the services which are so valuable to the older people in Southwark. And hopefully this presentation, these few pictures, will give you a glimpse of the work that our fantastic volunteers have done over the year. Okay, so as we've already said, all our volunteers are brilliant and vital to the work we do. They are all dedicated to helping older people in the community, and we couldn't be more grateful to them. But this year, because Link Age has been awarded the Volunteers Quality Mark, we felt that it was time for some of our volunteers to be recognised for their efforts. So for the very first time, we're hosting our Star Volunteer Awards. Now, this was always going to be tricky to identify the volunteers that should be singled out for their contribution, and it certainly was. But we requested the help of our service users by putting a flyer in the last newsletter, and our staff to nominate those volunteers who in some way stand out in their kindness, their dedication, and their commitment to the work we do. And we had a brilliant response. We had 30 nominations, and we are pleased to say that they cover all of our categories. We then set ourselves the task of deciding which of the volunteers we were going to recognise, and this was indeed a tricky job. But over a Zoom discussion, between Sophie, Jenny, Hilary and myself, and input from Melissa too, we managed to whittle the list down. So we have mugs for all our nominees and a trophy for our star volunteers. And so let's introduce ourselves to the nominees in no particular order. So over to you, Jenny.
Thank you, Caroline. So I have pleasure in letting you know who the Star Volunteer nominees are for our Awards 2020. We've got three lots of slides here, so to go through that. On the first slide, we've got Nat Wallace, James Hoffman, Ken Barnes, James Iverme, who was nominated by Limford, we spoke to earlier, Catherine Waugh, Leslie O'Mara, Luke Hudson, Andrew Whittingham, Toyo Dangasuran, Lucy Atkinson. So congratulations, all of them. We also have, I'm just trying to get my next slide, yeah, Spencer Barnes, Cornelia Brandauer, Stephen Taylor, Jane Gardner, Peter Ross, Claire Gold, Jean Hedden, Charlotte Long, Agatha Siembida, and Ian Buchan. And last but not least on this slide, we've got Leslie Anna Sarpong, Lucy Tyndall, Sue Anderson, Jonathan Smith, John James Damer, Juanita Fan, Charlotte North, Sophie Williams, and Pat Smith and Peter Knight. So thanks for everybody who's nominated our volunteers, but congratulations to all of them. So we're delighted to announce the star volunteers by their role category for 2020 as follows. Befriending is at the heart of our services. We work hard to get the right people matched in befriending relationships. The success of the relationship really does stem from the reliability of the volunteer and their patience in persevering in developing a relationship with an older person they've never met before. This is particularly the case when our service user has a diagnosis of dementia. Agatha does this with aplomb. Her nomination states, Agatha is incredibly caring and goes the extra miles with her befriendee, adapting her visits as her befriendee's dementia has progressed. She's always looking for new ways to engage and provide friendship, and has always showed huge commitment and consistency in her befriending role. Thank you and congratulations, Agatha. Our volunteer drivers are a vital cog in our services. They take our service users to and from groups and parties, tea parties we heard about earlier. They also take them to other events, and they put our services into a car and in an unhurried fashion take them to these locations. Claire has been volunteering with us for a long time, since 2005 in fact. She is patient and caring for the people she helps. Her nomination by Maria recognises Claire's continuous acts of kindness. She has helped Maria as a driver in other ways. She's kept in touch with her during the pandemic with letters and postcards with lovely pictures on, says Maria. So thank you, Claire, and congratulations on achieving this award. We're so lucky that we have volunteers with all sorts of skills. They help us with design, analytics, website management, taking part in sponsored events, to name but a few. Over the past 3 years, Andrew has done these things plus more. If you want to know who makes our volunteer newsletters that come out quarterly look so lovely, well, Andrew is this person. Andrew has brought his skills to groups as a photographer and leading activities using virtual reality technology. However, Andrew particularly helps many of our fundraising events, donning the Age Southwark t-shirt and shaking a bucket or two. And during the pandemic, he has excelled at helping us overcome the setback of not being able to hold our usual programme of fundraising events, and put his great pub quiz writing skills into practice for us, and has brilliantly hosted 4 highly successful quizzes on Facebook Live for us, the latter being this Wednesday at 7:30 if you'd like to take part, and I really recommend them. So thank you and congratulations, Andrew. Our groups provide a vital link to community and friendship for our service users. They attend to receive encouragement to exercise, enjoy a social time, and learn new things. Friendships grow as a result. Our groups rely on an amazing, dedicated team of group volunteers to carry out this work, as well as some professional tutors who take our exercise classes. Jean has been a stalwart group volunteer with us since 2012. She's a regular helping at our fundraising events too. Jean has even brought her dancing troupe to our Christmas parties over the past 2 years, and we'll miss not seeing them again this year. As an ex-teacher, Jean brings fantastic planning and reminiscence resources to her group in Camberwell, as well as her exercise training skills. The group, as a result, have a programme which includes arts and crafts, poetry, exercise, and of course, chatting and tea. Her nomination recognises Jean's great organisation skills, but also her wit and humour, which everyone appreciates. So thank you, Jean, for all you do. Congratulations on receiving this award. The admin load and office systems are a time-consuming part of what we do. It is so important that we remain on top of this work. We couldn't do so without the small army of office volunteers who help us in the office and latterly remotely. This could include anything from shredding to post-prepping to data input and taking minutes of our trustees meeting. So we're delighted that Leslie has been nominated for Star Office Volunteer. She's been coming to the office and is still helping since 2017. She fits her volunteering around her busy family life and can put her hand to any task the team asks of her. Her nomination states, Leslie fulfills our value of having a can-do attitude by always being willing to take on new tasks. She is reliable, a good team player, and she's a pleasure to have in the office. We're all very grateful for all her hard work, helping to support the work of Age Southwark. Thank you and congratulations, Leslie. As part of our mission to keep older people as independent as possible in their homes, we rely on our capable volunteers who are confident in completing home practical tasks. This work makes all the difference to our service users and removes another source of worry if we can get a small job done for them. Since becoming a volunteer 6 years ago, Nat is always a busy volunteer, has been always a busy for us. He also has a wide range of skills which include having a band that has performed at fundraising events. He always brings a smile and a positive attitude to any role he has taken on, which also has included befriending. However, as someone we can call on to help with practical support, Nat couldn't be better. Our service users love his can-do attitude, and his personal philosophy about volunteering is really in tune with what we're all about: community, smiles, and friendship. So thank you, Nat. Congratulations on receiving this award. Having volunteers who are adaptable is so helpful. We have many who are willing to take on more than one befriending relationship, do practical tasks, and help in other ways. This year, though, with the pandemic, we've had to adapt our service to meet new demands. In March, recognising the urgent need for some of our very isolated service users, for the first time, we set up a shopping and prescription collection service for service users. We had a fantastic response from our volunteers to our call for help. However, Peter's contribution has been amazing. A relative newcomer joining in 2019, Peter is a befriender and carries out a weekly shop for 2 people and has taken on gardening tasks too. It is for his shopping that we have received a nomination for Peter. Henry's nomination said, Peter has been doing my shopping and he is exceptional. I've really appreciated our distance doorstop conversations and the moral support he offers. Clearly, Peter is dedicated to volunteering. So congratulations on this award, Peter, and thank you. So I'm going to hand you back to Caroline now, who's going to talk about the rest of the awards we've got.
Okay, well, thank you very much to all our wonderful STAR volunteers. However, for some volunteers, a single category doesn't really cover everything they do for us. So this year, through the year, there have always been individuals who really stand out for the part they play in delivering our services. So we've also awarded 2 Superstar Volunteer Awards this year. We have very great pleasure in awarding this accolade to 2 very special volunteers. And our first Superstar Volunteer is Ken Barnes. Ken has been a fantastic non-stop volunteer since 2015, and in that time he's clocked up more driving assignments than any other volunteer, now running into hundreds of journeys. Ken is also committed to helping older people he gives lifts to in a hurried, non-threatening and safe as way as possible. He's also a volunteer driver for St Christopher's when their outpatient service is up and running. Ken is a vital cog in our fundraising efforts. He regularly takes and brings back our resources to make sure that, that all the events have the necessary tables, banners, leaflets, teapots, etc. And during the pandemic, Ken was one of the very first to volunteer his services, and he's now taking on prepping and delivering volunteer communications for us. Thank you, Ken, for being such a superstar volunteer, and congratulations on this very well-deserved award. Long may you continue volunteering with us. And our second Superstar Award goes to Luke Hudson. As a befriender, Luke has formed a great relationship with his befriendee. The relationship has been going strong since 2018. His calm, patient and friendly manner puts him in good stead for this role. He's been keeping in touch with Eileen through the pandemic by popping cards through her letterbox. He's also been dropping around to speak to hard-to-reach older people on their doorsteps to check that they are okay and to see if we can help them during this time. And on top of this, Luke has been one of the brilliant team of our volunteer shoppers, picking up and delivering essentials to 2 of our service users each week since March. And if this is not enough, Luke is putting his professional filmmaking skills into practice, creating a promotional video for us, which is amazing. His nomination says, "Thank you for being caring, reliable and proactive." Can we say more? So, thank you, Luke, for being our second superstar, and congratulations on receiving this award. We're really, really grateful for all the nominees we've received this year, and for our first Superstar Awards ceremony. But most of all, we're so grateful to our constellation of fantastic volunteers. Well, thanks to Jenny, and now I'd like to introduce Julian Walker, Head of Communications and Engagements for NHS South East London CCG. Julian is also joined by Ola Olatunde, the Communications and Engagement Manager for Southwark. So welcome to both of you.
Do I come out or do I? We're just adding them as panelists now.
Hello, everybody. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
I'll take silence as yes in this case. So, good morning. Congratulations again to all the winners. It sounded like some really, really impressive and just fantastic and really kind things that people have been doing. I'm here today from NHS South East London CCG. So the CCG plans, buys healthcare provision in the borough, essentially. And I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about what we're doing in terms of our plans to recover across the borough, and also to talk to you a little bit about the flu campaign. So I'm just going to share my screen if I can.
You should be able to do that now, Julian. Is
Brilliant.
It there for you?
It is, but it won't let me select the document that I want, so, but that doesn't matter. I'll continue anyway. So, as I was saying, with recovery, what we're doing in the borough, so we're trying to work in partnership, through Partnership Southwark, with a range of different organisations. So, the council, with local hospitals in the area, so community organisations such as yourselves, as well as individuals, carers, local communities. And the focus of our plan is to better join up services and support, essentially, so to tackle the causes of inequality and improve the health and well-being of Southwark residents. Essentially, we want to make Southwark and to continue to support Southwark to be an amazing place to be born, live a full life and spend one's final years. So we started working together with a focus on children and young people, working age adults, frailty and care homes. And earlier this year we did pause the partnership briefly due to the pandemic, and despite that, a lot of joint work continued. However, we do realise there are gaps in our approach, and part of this plan is about addressing those gaps and identifying sort of the right priorities for what health and care services can provide going forwards in the future. So the priorities which we identified are to, over the next, say, 18 months, are to improve the health and well-being of our population and tackle both new and long-standing inequalities within that. To help secure the financial future of our health and care economy, essentially ensuring that services are properly funded to deliver the care that people need, and then to enhance the experience of people using health and care services, so those receiving health and care, and reducing the variation that there can be in terms of accessibility and quality as well. And the fourth priority we have is enabling compassionate care. So supporting the health and well-being of our staff who deliver across the health and care system. Now, in planning how we will achieve these aims, we've identified a number of key themes. So as I've mentioned already, there's tackling inequalities, both new and those that have been highlighted by the pandemic. We're very keen to tackle this as a priority, as one of the main reasons for underlying causes of poor health and well-being. And we want to work closely with people in the community, people like yourselves, especially those who've been most impacted by COVID. Support the workforce, and we realise that isn't just in the NHS and in the council, but all across. Want to have a look at prevention as well, preventing people from becoming ill and supporting those with long-term conditions to stay and feel in control of their physical and mental well-being. We're also trying to develop, as I said earlier, better joined-up care. So there's a no wrong door approach, so people can turn up and get the support that they need, or be signposted to the correct place easily and seamlessly. So that's like a little bit of a highlight, but I realise it's quite high level and it's hard sometimes to get a bit of a handle on it. So some of the things that you could perhaps expect to see from the plan coming into fruition would be sort of emergency department pathways to support people to return home safely and quickly after a period of ill health, and say proactive support to children, vulnerable people living with long-term conditions. Now, there is a lot more detail available, and we're always wanting to hear what people's views about our plans are. It's one of the main reasons that I've come here today, and we'd be really interested in hearing whether these are sort of the right priorities, whether you'd be confident that we have laid out in the plan will support your families and your community's health and well-being over the next year to 18 months. If you have any suggestions or any support, any suggestions, any support that could be offered in terms of helping us to start to address some of the unequal impacts that COVID has had on different communities. And now we've got all of the information around our plan and around feedback form as well available on our website, and we can circulate the link afterwards. And I'd strongly encourage you to have a look and to get back to us with any questions, any views that you have. It would be very much appreciated. The other part of what I was here today to talk about was just a little reminder about flu and getting your flu vaccination. As we know, flu can cause serious complications for people, and not least for those over 65. And the vaccine offers the best protection there is. So if you have, I'd strongly encourage you to get in touch with your GP to arrange a vaccination. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian and Bola. And I'm now going to introduce Kieran Williams. Kieran is a strong supporter is a strong supporter of the voluntary sector in the borough. And
Hi, Caroline. Sorry to interrupt you. We're running a little bit early, and okay. Kieran isn't quite here yet. Okay. So I was just going to suggest if anybody has any questions, perhaps, or was Bola was Bola speaking?
Well, I can say a couple of things, if that's okay. It's just a little add-on to what Julian said, that if people know of those who are eligible to have the flu vaccine, perhaps they can sort of share that with their local neighbours as well, as a sort of reminder to their neighbours to say across the fence, or obviously in a socially distant way, to say if you haven't had a chance to go for your flu jab and you're eligible, look it up and find out, and contact your GP practice or local pharmacist to do that. So really it's just to help each other locally, to remind each other about the flu vaccine, because it is quite important, particularly so this season.
Thank you, Bola. So are we waiting for, we're still waiting, are we, for Kieran to join us?
Yes, we are, but we do have Alice and Helen with us already.
If they are ready, if they are available, I would like to introduce then Councillor Alice MacDonald, who's a recently elected Cabinet Member for Communities and Equalities, and Councillor Helen Dennis, who's the Cabinet Member for Older People. Congratulations to you both for your new appointments, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Hi, it's great to be with you. Sorry, it just cut us off as we moved across, but I think we're all online now.
Sorry to throw you in at the deep end there.
No, that's fine.
Thank you.
I'm Alice MacDonald, and I'm as you said, the new Cabinet Member for Communities and Equalities. Helen, do you want to introduce yourself, and then we'll just say a few things.
Yeah, sure. So hi everyone. I'm Councillor Helen Dennis. I'm Cabinet Member for Social Support and Homelessness, which also includes adult social care.
Great. So I think we're about 6 weeks into our respective new roles, and it's really great to be here today and to hear about all the brilliant volunteers. Just watching the awards now is definitely a great way to start a Tuesday. That's what it is. So I suppose in my role, I'm very much, as the title would suggest, responsible for how we look at equalities across the piece, but also how we work with the voluntary and community sector. I'm also responsible for modernisation, so looking at digital access as well, which I'll talk a little bit about. And Helen, do you want to just give an overview of your role, and then I'll just talk a few things.
Yeah, so it's a new role, bringing together areas across the council which haven't been brought together before, at least not in this way. But a number of the things that I'm responsible for, I think you would probably be interested in. Obviously, I'm working very closely with Alice around the delivery of a lot of this. So, as I mentioned, as adult social care, so at the moment that includes obviously kind of staying on top of everything related to COVID in relation to adult social care. Obviously also the development of the residential care charter that some of you might be aware of, and also overseeing the work around the Ageing Well partnership and the hub for seniors and carers, which was talked about earlier as well. I won't say too much about that again, but then also homelessness and some of the work around no recourse to public funds, and also the Southwark Emergency Support Service. So really trying to be essentially the kind of point person in the cabinet for a lot of our work around support for different residents.
So I guess what we both wanted to kind of just say obviously how great it is to be here today. I know Age Southwark, I'm a counsellor for Newington Wards, and I know you do brilliant work there, like the yoga classes that have been running. So I think it's just a really brilliant community organisation, and I think the intergenerational aspect that we've seen is so important, and something we've seen during COVID. I think obviously with COVID, it is something we need much more than ever, and definitely as a kind of a new cabinet and as a council, we are 100% committed to working to build a really strong voluntary sector that is able to tackle the inequalities that we have all seen so sadly during COVID. And I think COVID also really means we have to like refresh and reset how we work as a council with the voluntary sector. And one of the things we want to look at in the next few weeks is both our kind of next few months is our kind of volunteer strategy. So how can we really support and engage volunteers and really recognise it? I think in your impact report you kind of show not only the kind of community value but also the economic value of volunteers. So how can we really support and value and engage more people, and older people themselves are such brilliant volunteers across the community. As Helen said, launching the Ageing Well Hub is a really big and great commitment, and we've got to really work together to make it work effectively. I think I also wanted to kind of just talk about loneliness, as I think that is a real challenge for people of any age, and is going to be something increasingly as we go into the winter months in particular that will get harder. One thing we're particularly keen to look at is, you know, what do we do over Christmas to support older people who may be you know, not able to go to the normal social gatherings at that point. So that's something I'd love to discuss and get people's views on. And then I guess finally, I suppose we've committed to being an age-friendly borough, and it's really, you know, commitments are important, but action is much more important, and what we do next in the, you know, the next few years is really important. So it's really looking across the piece, from transport, communications, to housing, to social care, as Helen mentioned, about how do we really embed that approach in the same way that we want to embed an approach to tackling inequality across all of that work. And we can't do that alone. That's only through a dialogue and a conversation with all of you. And then I guess finally, just on the modernisation and customer services side, from my point of view, we know obviously COVID has changed the way we're all working. We're all on a Zoom call doing an AGM. I'm not sure how many you've done like this before. So it is really looking at how do we use these new tools, but how do we ensure that people who don't have access to them aren't cut off. So we are refreshing our digital strategy, which will be launching in the new year, but also our customer access strategy. So even things like, you know, when you call the council, are you getting the service? Are you able to access the service in the way that you need to be able to? Obviously, we don't have as many face-to-face services as we used to, and in COVID we definitely don't. So how can we make sure that the services that we're providing and the contacts that you as the voluntary sector, but also older people in the community are really working? So those are kind of two things coming up. So I guess I'll finish where I started, which is to say that I think, you know, we've all seen COVID has shown the inequalities, but it is also shown more than ever the value of community and people coming together. And I think in the year ahead, that's what me and Helen and Kieran and all the rest of the cabinet and councillors really want to do. So I'll hand over to Helen to say a bit more.
Thanks, Alice, and thanks again for your invitation to all of us. It's quite councillor heavy, but I hope that shows and demonstrates the level of support that there is in the council for the work, and just our recognition that you have been doing a huge amount, not just in response to COVID, obviously before as well. The report that was presented earlier highlighted much of the ongoing work that you have been doing, and the mobilisation of volunteers and the support that's been provided, and it was just fantastic as well to hear from Linford earlier as well, to really hear firsthand the impacts that befriending and support can really have on people's lives, and their positive mental health as well, in terms of being part of that community. I think you can never underestimate the value of chatting and tea, which I think was mentioned earlier in relation to kind of one of the volunteers. It's super important, and whilst I know that a lot of emphasis has been placed on the response to COVID in relation to food distribution, which again I know people have been involved in, also collecting prescriptions and that kind of physical support, which has been much required. Also, I don't think we can undervalue at all the the befriending work that has been done, and the importance of regular phone calls or socially distanced walks, and those kinds of activities that have been made available to people, because this response has got to be about mental health as well as about physical health. So thank you for that. Just to add on from Alice, also to say that the work that I'm also overseeing is going to take forward what we've called the Southwark Community Support Alliance, which is an emerging kind of partnership, essentially, coming out of the COVID response and the work of the community hubs, which I think, despite all of the challenges and the difficulties that people have faced over the last few months, and they have been obviously significant, it has been really fantastic to see people coming together in this way, and working, I think, probably more effectively than we ever have done in kind of recent years, between the council and the voluntary and community sector, and also the CCG, the health service side as well. So we're really looking forward to taking that work forward, and hope that Linkage is going to be a really key partner in that work. I'll just mention a few other things that Alice touched on. So the work around being an age-friendly borough, we're absolutely committed to taking that work forward. We know that we need to kind of pull some of these pieces together in a more kind of visible way. And so work around neighbourhoods, the kind of public realm, the kind of physical infrastructure, planning. There's lots of other components of that work, but we really hope to kind of get your inputs on that work going forward. And we've touched on the Older People's Hub, the Ageing Well work as well. Again, obviously we would have liked to have had a much kind of bigger launch of that, with the kind of hubs all kind of up and running. We've had the soft launch, and things are in place now, and I think that's going to make a real difference. That one front door approach hopefully will make things much easier for people across the borough to kind of navigate our services. So I think that that's really exciting, and I'm really looking forward to working with you all in that. I'll stop there. You've had enough from us probably, but just thank you again for all of your efforts. And we really hope that, kind of looking ahead, obviously we're still in a really uncertain phase, and we don't know what the next few months are going to look like, but let's all stay in touch, keep working together, and hopefully deliver really good outcomes for our residents.
Thank you.
Thank you. We had a question come through, Caroline.
Okay, I've got a question here from Rebecca. It says, yes. What are your thoughts about Christmas?
Alice, do you want to? Alice has been kind of thinking, well, we've both been thinking about this.
There's two sides to it. There's the kind of, obviously, the work that Helen's been leading on, and how do we ensure that, everyone's got the support they need, including over Christmas. And then what I've been thinking about with a few other councillors and community organisations, and love to talk to Linkage about this, is, how do we create the Christmas spirit when we can't be in the same places? And I know there are big gatherings that happen across Southwark for older people on Christmas Day and in the run up to. So we have been thinking about, can we, if people can't go anywhere, can we take some Christmas cheer to people on their doorsteps, whether that's delivering food and presents and working with volunteers across the community to do that as a kind of, to lift people's spirits. Been talking to People Care and other organisations. I know there's a big one that normally happens in Guy. So it's very early days, and I'd love to bring together a bit of a group just to think about, you'll know better than me what people would want, but it does feel like helping get a Christmas meal to people if they can't go elsewhere to do it, and a bit of community spirit. Who knows where we'll be in terms of what will be feasible at that point in terms of lockdown measures, tier 2, etc. So I think we have to plan for different eventualities and see how we can deliver some stuff on the doorstep, I suppose. So that's from my point, kind of thinking about the Christmas spirit side of things, particularly food deliveries and some gifts. But I don't know, Helen, do you want to say more on the, I mean, it's an ongoing effort.
No, I think we just want people's ideas, don't we, at this stage? It's, in some respects, we've got a lot of kind of community groups that have been involved in this kind of pantry style, preparing hot meals. So there's that kind of option that we can think about. But yes, like maybe that's not enough in terms of, how can we kind of create, I don't know whether it is virtually, like using virtual platforms, but there's that question around not just, kind of food on Christmas Day, but Christmas cheer and social support and friends and family, and how that can be facilitated under really difficult circumstances. So really interested just to hear people's ideas at this point.
Thank you. I'm sure that our wonderful volunteers and our team will have some ideas that we can feed into you on that. But thank you very much, both of you, for your time this morning. And Lucilla, are we ready?
First of all, yeah, if anybody has any more questions, please do type them in the box. But unfortunately, we don't have Kieran at the moment. So unless, yeah, general questions welcome, but we may have to move on in a moment. But thank you very much to Alice and Helen in the meantime. I will let you two off the hook.
I'm sure we've had such a fantastic response from
just for one question.
Okay. Yep.
Oh yes, we got one more. Alice, you mentioned digital equality in your intro. What's the council position on this?
So we've got a commitment to ensure everyone has access to the internet that they need. I think that COVID has shown a whole kind of aspect that I think people thought about in the past, but have been really brought to life in terms of digital poverty. I mean, my own personal position, I feel, is that access to internet is a right that everybody should have, and we've seen too many children, adults not being able to access that at home and being cut off because of that. So we are looking at how do we bridge that kind of digital divide, but also I'm very conscious that it is difficult to some people don't want to, won't be using digital tools, so we have to also cater for that and look at the range of tools and the ways that we can do that effectively. So there's loads of really innovative stuff you can do with digital, like, I don't know, we were having some electronic notice board trials before COVID, where instead of the paper boards, you'd have stuff directly that would come up in your state so you could see what was going on. So there's like one end of the scale, but then there's also just the fundamentals of how do we ensure everyone has broadband access, and particularly in the north of the borough, we know the Wi-Fi speeds in particular are very, very slow. So it is kind of comes back to the fundamental principle of everyone having the right to it, but we know that people have different circumstances and need to use it in different ways. So that this whole Connected Southwark strategy that will come out in the new year will be setting out in much more detail how we get internet to everyone and how we get access to services in the right way to everyone.
Thank you. So
yes, we don't have Kieran, unfortunately, so I think we may have to move on. But thank you very much, Alice and Helen. That's been great.
I've received one comment to say that given the wonderful response that we had to our request for shopping volunteers, I'm sure that if we could fashion some kind of Christmas outreach effort, we would be inundated with offers of help. So if you can put it together, I'm sure we can help you supply some volunteers to do that.
Brilliant. Well, we shall definitely be in touch about that and lots of other things. So thank you very much for having us.
Good. Well, that brings the business of this meeting to an end. And I'd like to thank you all for joining us in this slightly odd situation. I think that we've accomplished a meeting with many. I'm looking to see how many people have joined us. We had a good number of people joining us today, and I hope you found it useful and helpful and informative. And if you do have any questions, please do send us an email with those questions, and we can make sure after we finish the Zoom today, and we can make sure that we send them off to the right person to get them answered. And I'd just like to say thank you very much to the team for organising this, to Sophie and to Lucilla for being our moderator and in control of the button. But thank you all very much, and hopefully next time we'll be in person. But thanks a lot.